I want to go to the White House. Lucas Tomlinson is live there right now. Lucas, what can you tell us? Is there any reaction from the National Security Council or the President of the United States so far?
Well, NORAD, good evening, Lawrence. NORAD put out a timeline earlier about how we got here. That latest object was shot down over Canadian airspace in the Yukon Territory, rugged territory, about 100 miles east of Alaska at 3:41 Eastern Time, about 11:41 local. Even though it was flying over Canadian airspace, as notable as a U.S. Air Force F-22 Raptor launched from Elmendorf Air Force Base that shot down that object. This is the third time in the past week that U.S. Air Force F-22s have shot down an aircraft over North America, as you can see here from our chart. A week ago over the coast of South Carolina, yesterday off the northern coast of Alaska, as you see here, and just now this afternoon in the Yukon Territory. We had that FAA warning closing some airspace over Montana. It appears that was done out of an abundance of caution is what we're hearing now. F-15 Eagles in the U.S. Air Force Reserve were scrambled out of Portland. They flew in the area, and it doesn't appear like they have seen anything. That's according to some officials right now. But bottom line is, what's most concerning to officials at the Pentagon is the object today and the object yesterday were able to penetrate U.S. airspace over Alaska. This one that was shot down over Canada first was detected on radar, not till it was already flying over Alaska. That's what NORAD said earlier, Lawrence. It's very concerning. And, of course, going back to that Chinese spy craft that was shot down off South Carolina, remember, that launched from China on January 21st and spent over a week crossing the Pacific. It appears that went undetected until it was spotted January 28th over the Aleutian Islands. So certainly this appears to be a gap. I heard your guest earlier talking about probing, looking at U.S. air defenses. It's just notable that satellites did not appear to pick up these spy craft, and it was ground search radar that did. But, of course, that's very limited to the curvature of the Earth, so you're not going to pick those up. In this case, the last two, till they had already breached U.S. airspace, Lawrence.
You know, Lucas, a lot of folks don't know this, but you have a deep experience in the military. You were in the academy. So I want you to put that hat on for a second. What is the U.S. doing right now that we have? It seems like all these unidentified aircrafts or whatever they are, drones, are just making their way now. So what is our positioning right now from a defense standpoint? What are we doing?
Well, Lawrence, you know when you're looking through old emails, you're trying to figure out where to find them. You're not just going through your emails one by one. You're doing keyword searches. The reason that some of these spy craft were detected during the Trump administration was because they're taking this data that they're collecting from these balloons and going back to the system. Because the U.S. military, civilian satellite companies, anyway, none of them get rid of that data. So they're going back, just like finding those old emails using keyword searches, finding out where these could have been detected. That's how they're going back and finding these. But it's very notable that, you know, U.S. spy satellites for years, they've been looking at North Korean missile launches, ballistic missile launches, IR satellites flying over space. They're looking for those booms, explosions. Those are what gets picked up. They have a library of information. That's how they know what kind of missiles flying from North Korea, for example, the range and all that. It's about historical data. That data just does not exist with these balloons. So while the Pentagon on the classified side could have been tracking some of these balloons for years, certainly going back, let's talk about those UFOs that were seen off the USS Nimitz in the Pacific years ago. Remember, we had those fighter pilots saying they saw this unidentified craft. They're moving quickly. Some of the pilots I've heard that have, including some of the ones that have spoken to the pilots that shot down those craft over Canada and the one over Alaska yesterday, say these were not balloons. These were, craft objects, if you will. They're very similar to those that were spotted over the Pacific. So it's very concerning. There's certainly, something else the Pentagon's going to have to look for. But just talking, just in the Navy, I mean, when you're, standing watch and you have air search radar on, when you're looking at different objects in the air, they fly, profiles. You know what an airliner looks like. It flies 20, 30, 40,000 feet. It's squawking on IFF. It's kind of like when the radar hits it, it kind of returns and says, hey, here's who I am. Whether you're Delta Airlines flight, for example, 952 or whatever, that's going to be seen on radar. So in the case of these craft, when those U.S. military fighter jets are flying alongside these craft, obviously there's no one to hail. There's no one inside to talk to. And in terms of a radar section, when they're bouncing off and you're not getting a return because it's mysterious. Frankly, as somebody told me, it's not like The Hunt for October. I'm kind of dating myself here, Lawrence. I don't remember the movie, but when they heard that new sound, and the computers said it was a seismic, an earthquake, but it was really a new class of Russian submarine. Very similar here. These are new systems that the Pentagon is just not very familiar with. So they're updating their computers. They're also going back in time to see what else made this kind of sound, what else emitted this kind of frequency. That's what they're doing right now, Lawrence.
Lucas Tomlinson, a wealth of knowledge. Thank you for joining us from the White House tonight.